I'm having surgery. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. And today I have another story for you for Saturday Stories. Now, in the very beginning of this video, I mentioned that I need to have surgery. And this is true. So I'm going to tell you all about it. So for starters, we're going to go back like 3 years because I need to tell you about the story, which is kind of long, so I might have to make this more than one video, but I have to tell you how the whole thing started. So going back 3 years, I was working at a fulfillment center for that deals with packaging, and basically what one of my jobs is we have these pallets, and each pallet belonged to like a certain route that drivers would have to take in order to get the packages where they needed to be. And my job was to take those said packages on said route, find them, and load them onto the pallet so that what we called spider monkeys could then take the pallets to the loading trucks and load them up for drivers to take out of the center. Part of doing this was lifting really heavy boxes and packages and bags that were full of envelopes and smaller boxes. The bigger the box, like the heavier it was, the more that we didn't want to put it in the bags because we wanted to be able to lift the bags easily without hurting ourselves. So basically what there was is this giant like shelf almost like thing, and you had a space underneath like at the bottom where all the big boxes go, and then above that you have 3 shelves, and each shelf had a bag in it, and they were all numbered, so like the rows and then the columns were all numbered and lettered and everything so that you knew exactly where you were going to get the packages. And sometimes you'd find that they were mixed in with other packages, so sometimes you had to like pull the boxes out and look through the boxes to be able to find which one goes to your route that you have on your paper. And it was easiest when we picked up the boxes themselves and put them on the pallet first, and then after we got that, then we can go to the bags. And the bags were huge. They were like, I don't know, maybe, I was gonna say like this tall, but what is that showing you right now? From the ground up. So obviously this is the couch, right? Excuse my little mess over here. So you see how the couch is right here? It would come up to about right there. So like if I were to lean over into the bag, it would go all the way down to the ground, and it would, be about that. So standing up, it would come up to maybe your waist, if not low stomach area. So they were pretty big bags. Literally, the broken ones we got to bring home, and we literally used them as laundry baskets because they zipped and they had handles, so they were really easy to maneuver and get around and all that other stuff. So you had to be able to lift like 50 pounds in order to work at this job. So obviously you're working with some pretty heavy stuff here, and they had pilot jacks, and you had to be trained to use them before they would let you use them, obviously. So 9 times out of 10 it was the spider monkeys, is what we called them, that were the ones that was able to use those things. But we were trained how to pick things up. You go to the box, you squat down, you pick up the box, you stand up using your legs because you're squatting to get the box in the first place, and then you turn your whole body. You don't just turn your back, you turn your whole body so that wherever the box is going, your entire body is facing that direction and going with the box so that you don't throw your back out or hurt yourself. And then when you're dealing with the bags, they're on a shelf, first of all. So what they do tell you is you have to grab the bag and you have to like move it around so that you can get a feel for how heavy the things are in the bag, so that when you're pulling it off the shelf, you know how heavy that's about to be so that you can safely take it down. What they fail to tell you is that the shelf takes a lot of the weight for you, even if you're moving the bag around to test the weight of the bag. So there were a lot of times where you had this really small package that weighed like 70 pounds and it's sitting inside the bag with a bunch of other stuff, making it way over that, obviously. And the weight of that is being held by the shelf. So moving that around, you're not necessarily going to feel the whole like weight of that. You might feel like, oh, there is something heavy in here. Maybe I should take that out before I take this down, because obviously you're going to have that one little weight. But if it's just barely heavy enough to where the majority of the weight, even when moving the bag around, isn't like detected, it can throw you off. And basically what happened was I was working one day and my friend and I, we were getting our boxes together. We got everything out of the heavy boxes done out of the way. They were on the pallets. They were, being shipped off to where they needed to go. And we were focusing on getting all of the bags that we needed. And I go to the top row of one of the columns or whatever, and I move the bag around. The bag's not very full, so I'm like, okay, well, this isn't going to be very heavy. Let me test the weight of the bag, whatever. And it felt light. So I was like, okay, I'm going to pull this down. So I go to remove the bag from the top shelf, like the third shelf up, and which is technically 4 shelves, because if you count the bottom shelf where all the boxes sat, that was its own shelf. So it was 4 shelves high, and I was at the top one that I was pulling it from. And I miscalculated or misjudged the weight of one of the boxes that was in this bag. And it was a heavier bag. And because the whole bag wasn't like packed full, like there wasn't a bunch of boxes and stuff inside of it, there was a lot of leeway and a lot of room to move. So when I pulled the bag forward off the shelf, the heavier box shifted to the right. And because I'm grabbing it like this, pulling it down, and it shifted to the right, well, it took my whole wrist like this and went all the way down to the ground. Like the bag went down to the ground and my whole hand twisted backwards and went down with it. And it hurt so bad. I was like, oh, I'm gonna feel that in the morning. But I didn't think it was like a huge deal. I was like, it's just like, what harm, like how much harm could that have done? So I think I'll be okay. Because there's always that hidden moment where you're on a time limit when you get hurt at work. Any workplace that you're at, you get hurt, you're on a time limit. Because if you wait too long, then you can't get reimbursed for getting hurt on the job. But then if you say something, then it opens up the possibility to have this case open, and the injury doesn't always need to escalate that much. So my best advice for anyone out there, the moment you get hurt, whether it's big or little, even if you're just bringing it up, be like, hey, just for workman's comp purposes, or just for the record, this happened. I don't think it's going to get to that point, but I'm saying something now so that you know about it, so that if it does turn into that, you knew from like when it first happened. Because let me tell you, I was this close to waiting too long because I didn't say anything. I hurt myself. I was like, oh, this is going to hurt in the morning. I'm going to feel that later. whatever. And I kept working. Well, did I mention the part where I'm lifting boxes up to 50 pounds? So I continued to work, and I continued to pull routes, and I continued to pull these bags off the shelf, and I continued to lift these boxes off the floor to put them on to pallets. I continued lifting pallets and moving things around and working. And there were a few times where it was kind of hard for me to grip onto something without it hurting. I definitely felt and noticed a difference in like the weight of things instantly. And by that, I just kind of mean like something that I could pick up before the whole accident happened that wouldn't have been very heavy was suddenly heavy to me. And that was kind of concerning to me. And I just like, I faced and fought myself like, oh, I feel like this is something that maybe I should say something to my bosses about. This is something that maybe I should bring up. But at the same time, my girlfriend at the time was being put back on workman's comp because she tore her ACL in her knee, or a tendon or something she tore something in her knee and needed to have surgery. And her mom, because all three of us worked together, and her mom also had a work-related injury at the same job that we were working at, where she pulled something in her shoulder, tore something else, and wound up also needing surgery. So them two were already out on workman's comp cases. There were 4 of us living in the house at the time, 3 of which, her mom, and myself, were the ones working, pulling in the income, because the only other person was her grandmother, who I believe was retired. But obviously, you're living in a house of 4 people, you're gonna need money. Also, my sister was living there too, so at one point there was 5 of us. So to have, 3 out of the 4 people that have jobs that are bringing in the money to be out of work, I didn't really think that I could afford for me to also be out on workman's comp because of this. So I tried to just bite the bullet and keep working and work through it and work past it, thinking this is minor. It's not going to amount to anything. It's not going to amount to, whatever. It's not going to be as bad as, it really was. I did not think it was going to be that bad. So I kept working, and my friend, she noticed the difference. I couldn't move as fast as I had been. And I was trying to work on my speed so that I can keep up and, get a certain amount out like the rest of the crew. Because you had to get a certain amount out so that we could be on time. And if we didn't get all of the deliveries or packages out on time, then people weren't getting their packages. And we did not want that to be a situation, because then, we're losing customers at that point. And that's never something that you want to go through. So I continued working the rest of that day. And I came back the next day, and I was still having trouble. And I worked half the shift before I was just like, oh my God, this pain is so bad. Should I say something? And I was asking my friends, I was like, do you think I should say something? And some of them were like, you should have said something yesterday, but you didn't, so I definitely think that you should now. One friend was like, well, it's up to you. I mean, do you feel like you should? Is it still bothering you? Do you think that, it's something that's going to go away, that it's not going to get worse or whatever? And then another friend was like, straight up, yes, you got hurt at work. You need to say something. Even if it's not going to amount to anything, you still should say something. So I was like, okay. So I left and I went to talk to my managers. Well, the first thing that they brought up was, why didn't you say something sooner? Well, the reason why I didn't say anything sooner is because I was trying to avoid being put on workman's comp. Because like I said already, 3 out of the 4 of us that were working being on workman's comp, that was not about to be a pretty situation at home. And I was worried that me being on workman's comp was gonna cause everyone at home to struggle financially. So, and I told my manager that. I was like, I already have these 2 that are out. I can't necessarily afford to be put on workman's comp, but it is still hurting. So I do feel like I should say something so that at the very least we can kind of accommodate the situation so that it's not getting worse, basically. So he went ahead and had me fill out paperwork, like the statement or whatever, to explain to him what had happened. I was already having some other issues where I would have like really, really bad like chest pain. And because on top of having like the workman's comp case that I was going through, I was having some medical issues as well, but I did not have a doctor at the time. So I was just kind of like up in the air on, oh, well, this is wrong and this is wrong and this is happening, but I don't have a doctor, so I don't have anyone to see about that, so I don't know. And then this happens, and it's like, that does not help the situation whatsoever. So they were already kind of keeping their eye on me, because there were times where I would definitely start to feel like I was gonna go blind, or like I was gonna faint, or like something along those lines. I know what the issue about that is now, but I definitely did not understand that issue at the time. So he has me sit down. He has me stop working. I didn't work the rest of that day. He was like, well, let's put some ice on it. We're going to have ice be put on it for about 15 minutes. We'll come back. We'll see how it feels. And if you still feel like you need to have more ice, we'll go for 30 minutes. I'm like, okay. So I sit down, and he puts this giant ice pack around my wrist, my right wrist at that, and he walks away. There's no like timer. He doesn't set a timer. I don't have my phone with me because we can't have our phones on the floor. So I don't have a way to like keep track of how long I've had this on there. And he was gone for what seemed like 45 minutes. And then he took it off, had me leave it off for like 5 minutes, and then he put it right back on. And then he walked away again and was gone for like 30 minutes. So I'm just sitting here with an ice pack on my wrist and arm for an extended amount of time, way longer than what he said that he wanted to do this for. And it was not helping. It was making it hurt more. So I was confused. I was like, isn't this supposed to be reducing swelling? Isn't this supposed to help? It wasn't helping. So he would come back and he'd be like, well, let's try some icy hot or whatever. So I'd be like, okay, well, let's put some of that on there. That also didn't do anything. From there, he was like, well, what do you want to do? If you don't want to do workman's comp, what can we do to accommodate you? Well, I was like, well, I can still try to work, but it hurts to lift things, and it's hard for me to lift them without being in pain, and crying. And some of my friends noticed that, that happened, because he also asked me like what made me want to come and tell him. And I was like, well, it does hurt. And I did talk to some people about it. I did let my area manager know, because they had like different people, like sections, that a section leader. And so I told my section leader that, hey, this happened, so I'm going to be moving slow today. And that person recommended to talk to you. And then during break, I talked to some other friends of mine, and they also agreed that I should come say something. So here I am, whatever. I don't know why I'm holding the camera with my bad hand, but I am. So basically, with that being said, he was trying really, really hard to have the icy hot and the ice pack help, and they just were not helping. They were making it worse, and they were on my wrist for far too long, and then there was no real downtime between icing it here and then icing it here. Like, there was like a 5-minute gap where I didn't have the ice on, and it was just straight icing for like hours. And I sat up there for the rest of my shift. So the rest of the day, that's where I was. So, was not helping. So then we decided, okay, well, we'll have you do a few things. We'll get you a brace or whatever that you can wear. Like, I literally was wearing a brace that my ex and her family had at home. And I believe it was for bowling. So I was wearing that while I was working. Or I would walk around with my wrist wrapped around in the ice pack. And I would just audit, basically. And basically what that meant was I went around and made sure that all of the packages were where they needed to be, that everything in the bags were correct and the right numbers and everything, that the buses were properly packed and ready to go for deliveries and all this other stuff. I would also go around and just see how people were doing and what better ways that we can go about things, and stuff that was a lot of paperwork, not a lot of lifting. But that only lasted for so long before they were getting irritated that I could only do so much. So about, I want to say 3 to 4 days to a week, that's how I worked. I didn't really lift stuff. I helped here and there other people, and my wrist wasn't getting better, like, at all. So at home, they suggested, like, if the ice isn't working, why don't you try heat? So I was like, okay, well, let's go ahead and try the heat. So I put on a heating pad, and the pain went straight up my arm and into my shoulder. So it made it worse. I then informed, my manager the next day, because he was asking about how everything went and was wanting to, like, get somewhere in the progress of this whole situation. And I told him, I was like, the ice wasn't helping, because he said to keep icing it at home. I said the ice wasn't helping, it was making it hurt more. So I tried heat, and now my whole arm hurts. So there's that. And he flat out yelled at me and was like, are you trying to get better? Because if you were, why are you not listening to my instructions? First of all, you're not a doctor. Okay? So you cannot give me medical advice and expect me to listen to that 100% and then expect that everything is going to just go away, because you're not a doctor. And if I'm trying the things that you're telling me to do and it's not working, I'm gonna go somewhere else. I'm gonna go with another method. Obviously, if your method is not working and my method is not working, then there's a bigger problem here. So I was starting to think that maybe, and against my better judgment, I did need to go on workman's comp. So I was talking with him and, getting yelled at, and I was like, you know what? I don't know what else to do. It's not getting better. The ice isn't working. The medication is not working, like the pain relief wasn't working. The icy hot is not working. A heating pad is not working. The ice pack is not working. Not using it is not working. Maybe I should go ahead. Like, do you think I should go ahead and be on workman's comp? And he said it was completely up to me on whether or not I was on workman's comp or not. So I said, you know what? It's probably best that I am put on workman's comp, because this situation is just going to keep going like this because it's not getting better. So he was like, okay, well, in that case, you need to go talk to the workman's comp doctor. Therefore, you have to leave work right now. But before I could do that, he was like, go talk to the nurses that are here, because they had trained professionals on shift, because it is a dangerous work environment. People get hurt a lot doing the work that I was doing at that place. Except all of those people were not scheduled to work my shift. So I get injured and the medical team is not they're not scheduled to work that shift. So I have to wait until a different shift to even go and talk to them. So I, set up an appointment. I schedule like a good time to be able to go and talk to the medical team at the job. I talk to them and they're agreeing with me about workman's comp and all this other stuff. So we set up the case. I go to this physical therapy establishment, place, whatever, and I get a workman's comp doctor. And I'm seeing the doctor, and he was like, well, you definitely need physical therapy. He's having me do all of these things, like I have to hold my hand down like this, which doing this makes my thumb go numb. Then pushing it up this way, which doing that makes my pinky and my thumb go numb. Then he would have like a finger that he would hold out, and I'd have to like push down on it. Well, the grip and the resistance from my hand in my right hand is significantly less than that in my left hand. So he definitely thought that something definitely was up. And it was popping a lot when it first happened. So he was like, okay, well, we're going to have you go to physical therapy, and we're going to see what the therapists think that you have, and then we'll just like kind of collaborate to kind of figure out what's wrong with you and how we can fix that and get you back to work. So I'm like, okay, whatever. We're basically gonna leave the story at that. I explained, I went over the things that happened and how I got injured. So the next video, I'm gonna go into detail on the things that happened when I started physical therapy, and how the injury affected my daily life at home, the things that I had to go through with all of that, and I will continue the story in the next video. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this Saturday Stories, and hope that you guys come back for another Saturday story to continue the talk about me needing surgery. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!